Don't even try it, hand over the envelope, she snapped, voice cutting through the tense hush. You think you can waltz in here and, he stumbled, face pale beneath the yellow ceiling lamp. I'm not asking. Her hand hovered above the cracked dresser, knuckles white. Do it now. He hesitated, scraping a chair back, sweat beading at his temple. You don't know what you're doing, that's safe. I know exactly what I'm doing. The metal gleam in her eyes didn't waver. Move or I will. A muffled gasp from the hallway. The room felt too small for all the old air and anger. He reached toward the drawer, eyes darting. I'll ruin you for this, he threatened. A sharp laugh, you've already tried. She moved closer, blocking escape. Everything balanced on that one motion, not just a drawer or an envelope, but decades of being pushed aside. To understand how she ended up standing between a liar and the last thing connecting her to home, you have to go back to the day when everything began to unravel. $43.28. That's all Megan could see on her phone screen, glowing faint blue under the stubborn drizzle pulsing outside Cedillo, the part of New Mexico nobody wrote about, not since the mines closed. The rain had come fast. Now it coated the cracked blacktop and streaked across the windshield of her battered Outback, pooling in the divots where the dashboard used to hold coins for tolls. In the back, 2 canvas duffels and a cardboard box threatened to spill open, Angie's pink umbrella poking out between a worn coat and a bag of half-eaten pretzels. Angie shifted in the passenger seat, twisting a rubber band around her fingers. She stared at the cabin ahead, its peeling turquoise door sagging off its hinges as if the whole place was bowing in resignation. Is this really it? Angie asked, biting her lip. Megan glanced at her through the wiper-streaked window. It's what's left, she answered, holding her phone up like proof. And that's every penny we've got. Angie pressed her face against the cold glass, breath fogging a small patch. It doesn't even have a mailbox. Doesn't need one, Megan muttered. She didn't mention the ache in her ribs or the way sleep kept dropping her into new nightmares, her father's face, gone slack in the hospital bed, then the lawyer's clipped voice, then Oliver's mother's laughter echoing through her skull. Just last week, Megan had been at her father's funeral, Angie's hand clenched in hers. She could still hear Pamela's voice, Oliver's stepmother, precise as a scalpel cutting through the crowded reception. You'll be taken care of in a manner of speaking, Pamela had said, her eyes icy. There's always the cottage by the lake. Beside her, Oliver's cousin Terrence smirked, drink sloshing in his cup. Got more holes than roof, from what I heard. Angie had eyed them, jaw set. What about the main house? Dad wouldn't, but Pamela turned away, her pearls rattling against the rim of her wine glass. Don't trouble yourself, dear. The adults can handle numbers. Now, a week and a lost job later, Megan faced this. A condemned cabin on a puddled lane lay invisible behind a curtain of fog. Above the rotting steps, a sagging signboard, once painted with the family name, hung askew. The wind whistled through broken shutters. In the shadows by the porch, Oliver's stepbrother Nathan idled, arms crossed, a smile twitching on his lips. Long drive for a dump, Meg, Nathan called out, nudging an empty beer can with his boot. Megan straightened, opening her umbrella against the drizzle. You said there was paperwork. Pamela swept in behind Nathan, an umbrella snapping overhead. Of course, just sign and take possession, no fuss, we'd hate for you to feel shortchanged. Terrence laughed, eyes glinting. Maybe you'll find some old treasures in there, or rats. As Megan fumbled with the door key, her palm brushed something cold, an intricately carved button attached to the inside panel. She pressed, more out of frustration than curiosity. The bottom panel of the door swung slightly, revealing a sliver of yellowed newspaper peeking out from a hidden compartment. She hesitated. What had she just found? If you've ever stood with nothing but rain and biting laughter between you and your future, and still decided to step forward, then you know why Megan did not turn away. Getting the door open took 2 shoulders and one not quite healed heart. Megan shoved as the swollen wood groaned. Inside, the air stank of linseed oil and decades-old dust, thick enough to bite. She flicked her phone's flashlight around the gloom. The living room gave way almost immediately to a collapsed kitchen wall, linoleum curling upward like dead leaves, fridge door yanked open and empty. Angie hovered behind her, blinking fiercely to hide nerves. Where do we even sleep? Megan took a long breath, letting the air burn her lungs. Pick the room furthest from the roof holes, we improvise. They carried the essentials in, stepping around warped floorboards and water stains. Thunder rumbled, muffled by the sagging ceiling. In a half-broken dresser by the bedroom window, a relic with tarnished brass pulls and a finish long since eaten by humidity, Megan noticed scratch marks in the bottom drawer. The panel wobbled. "Mom, does the lamp work?" Angie called, voice trembling only a bit. "Try it, I'll check this," Megan replied, yanking at the stuck drawer. The bottom didn't budge at first. Only when she dug her fingers along the back edge did a piece of wood slide away, revealing a hidden recess beneath 4 fake inches. Inside lay a velvet pouch so old its threads had frayed to powder. Megan's throat tightened. "Angie," she called, voice tinny, "you should see this." Angie poked her head around the doorway, lamp in hand. "What is it?" Megan unknotted the pouch, spilling out a string of gleaming emeralds, a ruby ring blinking fiercely, a clutch of pearls that seemed to hum in even that meager light. Their family hadn't just left a crumbling cabin, they'd hidden something that could change everything. The rain, for the first time, sounded like hope scratching at the warped glass. The world outside had shrunk to gray puddles and dripping pines by the time they finished exploring what little was left. Angie lit 2 candles, the only items spared from the boxes, and watched Megan try to piece together the jumble of velvet pouches and old photographs. Every so often, Megan would stop, heart pounding, to rub at a smudge of dust clinging to a chain or a ring. The heirloom jewelry sparkled against the gritty dresser, brighter than should have been possible in so broken a place. "Do you think it's real?" Angie whispered, voice half awe and half disbelief. Megan shrugged, fingers working the clasp of a heavy locket. The chain was stamped with a mark she'd never seen, but the weight was right. "If it's not, someone put in a lot of effort to fool us. That's real enough for me." Angie opened an old envelope tucked deep in the drawer's false bottom. On the brittle cardstock was an address, scrawled in hurried pen, and a list of family names, each one struck through but for theirs at the very bottom. Megan scanned it, eyes narrowing. 1938, that's before the war, that's your great-grandmother's handwriting. Inside the envelope was a black and white photograph of a woman standing on the cottage's porch, shadowed by 2 small children. The image was torn along the edge, right where a second building, maybe the boathouse, should have appeared. Why would they hide this here? Angie wondered aloud. The question lingered. Night closed in. Rain battered the roof. Megan found a flashlight and tested the lock on the inside door to the boathouse, but it had rusted shut. Her father's voice echoed again, "Never trust what they offer first." She tried to recall all the stories he'd told about family, lines crossing and recrossing until blood and debt became indistinguishable. Somewhere in the dark, an engine idled, taillights flaring red as Nathan pulled away down the access road. Megan watched from the warped front window. "We need someone who understands this stuff. This," she swept a trembling hand across the baubles. "This isn't just jewelry, it's evidence. Why wasn't it in the will? Why this dump and not the real house?" Angie exhaled, voice barely a whisper. Maybe this was always the real house, for them at least. The next morning, Megan packed the jewelry and the creased letter into her purse, then leaned in the threshold to listen. Nothing but rain pattering, the sullen drip of water into tin pans on the floor. They left the lights burning just for the ghosts. If the cabin had been standing 5 degrees more upright, Megan would have driven into town for coffee. Instead, she and Angie hiked, raincoats pulled tight, heads down, to Cedillo's tiny main street, the jewelry box thumping against Megan's thigh with every step. The coffee shop was just opening. She let the familiar hum of the refrigerator and hiss of steam settle her shoulders. Angie elbowed her. "You're seriously going to show that stuff to someone in here?" Megan hesitated, scanning the stained ceiling. "No, we need an expert, not town gossip." So they crossed 2 blocks to the thrift store where a hand-painted sign read, "Trueworth Appraisals, Walk-ins Welcome." The bell above the door tinkled sharp. Mrs. Hanley, who'd known Megan's father since high school, squinted up from her register. "Megan Dawes, that really you?" Megan tried to sound casual. "Need an opinion if you've got a minute." They found space in a cramped backroom. Megan set the velvet pouches before Mrs. Hanley, watching the woman's practiced hands draw each piece into the pale daylight. Mrs. Hanley's breath caught at the ruby ring. She turned it gently, then held the big emerald necklace up against a faded sheet of white. "Lord have mercy, where did you get these?" Megan hesitated, lowering her voice. "They were hidden in the cottage. We were told it was condemned, nothing but water damage and mold." "Who told you that?" Mrs. Hanley asked, glancing sideways. "Pamela and Nathan, the whole family." Angie jumped in, cheeks burning. Mrs. Hanley clicked her tongue. Your father talked about his mother hiding things away during the hard years, but I never thought." She set the necklace down, pinching the bridge of her nose. "Megan, if these are what I think they are, and if you can prove they're yours, you're holding a small fortune. And that address on the envelope, that's the original property line, goes all the way past the boathouse." Megan blinked. "That's not what the will says. That's not what Pamela signed over." Mrs. Hanley's lips pressed flat. "I hope you understand what this means. You need help fast." Her words hung heavy in the musty air. Megan and Angie hurried out, shoes splashing across the mud. "She said a fortune," Angie whispered, almost afraid to hope. "Does that mean we're safe?" Megan shook her head. "Nothing's ever that simple." It wasn't just about the money. It was about proof, what was owed, what had been clawed away, and what Megan would have to do to get it back. And for the first time in weeks, Megan felt herself standing a little taller. The sun hauled itself up, glimmering on the rain-soaked roads as Megan fished an old business card out of her coat. It was for Whit McAllister, the lawyer her father had trusted before Pamela showed up. Angie squinted at the faded lettering. "Do you think he'll help us?" Angie asked, voice pitched low as dawn. "I think he'll remember Dad," Megan said. "And if not, a $2 million secret might jog his memory." They reached McAllister's office as the sun peeled the last mist off the pavement. The building was squat, brick-faced, with a single brass plaque on the door. Inside, it felt like walking into a thermos bottle, stale but safe. The receptionist looked up, blinking. "Appointment." Megan set the brown jewelry box on the counter. "No, but we've got something Mr. McAllister is going to want to see immediately." Moments later, Whit himself ushered them into his cramped office, specs perched on his nose. "Well, now haven't seen you since Lester's memorial." He listened as Megan laid out the story, the will, the insult of the gift, the discovery in the dresser. He peered at the property lines on the envelope, mouth tightening. "I warned your father, but Pamela, she's sharper than people think, subtle about how she shifts numbers. If this map's right, that land is worth 5 times what she let on." Angie's eyes widened. "What can we do?" "You need an appraisal, photos, a claim filed with probate before Pamela's divorce finalizes in 60 days. After that, her assets get locked up. If there's fraud, you may even trigger a state investigation." McAllister paused, examining the signature. "And as for these," he gestured to the jewelry, "if the collection's real, the IRS will want to know why it's never been reported." "So we've got a clock ticking," Megan said. McAllister nodded, his usual drawl gone flat. "I'd hurry if I were you." Megan clenched the edge of the desk. "And if Pamela finds out we're challenging it?" McAllister leaned closer. "She'll come out swinging," he murmured. "That family doesn't like surprises." Back at the cottage, Angie pressed her face to the kitchen window, watching the lake. "Every time we get close," she muttered, "it changes shape." Megan edged beside her, resting elbows on cracked formica. "You're still thinking about the jewelry." "I'm thinking about all of it." Angie twisted a ring on her finger, the emerald catching the early light. "What if they take it away again?" "We fight smarter this time," Megan said, tracing the map. "We use the clock against them." The phone on the counter vibrated. The number Pamela's flashed red. Angie's breath hitched, but Megan stabbed the answer key, putting it on speaker. "Hello," Pamela's voice was buttersmooth. "Just a courtesy call. Did you find anything interesting in the cottage, or did you move back to Texas yet?" Megan stared at the jewelry on the chip table. No news just yet, still settling in. Pamela chuckled, voice hardening at the edges. "You know, property transfers are pretty final here. I hope you're not thinking of stirring up old ghosts." "I don't believe in ghosts," Megan said. "Just unfinished business." Pamela went silent, but Megan could hear the soft exhale, hesitation or worry. "You'll learn to let things go, dear," Pamela said finally. "Not everything's worth holding onto." "Some things are," Megan replied, glancing at Angie. Pamela hung up. Megan exhaled, fist tight. She watched Angie, who still hovered uncertain, but then Angie squared her shoulders, mirroring her mother. The cottage felt different then. For all its sags and silences, it whispered a new challenge rather than surrender. Pamela moved fast. The next morning, a truck rumbled up the drive as Megan scrambled eggs over a flickering burner. She stepped onto the porch, rain jacket zipped up. Nathan and Terrence emerged, boxes in hand. "We're just clearing out old junk for you," Terrence explained, smile not reaching his eyes. Megan crossed her arms. "I haven't asked for help." Nathan picked at his thumbnail, "Just trying to make the place livable, Pamela's orders." Angie pulled at Megan's sleeve. "They're looking for something." Megan nodded. "Go watch the driveway." She trailed them as they rooted through trunks and closets, eyes lingering too long on the old dresser. Terrence crouched by the bottom drawer, then stood, sighing. "Nothing here but dust," he muttered as Nathan stalked into the hall, searching. Terrence leaned in, voice low. "If you know what's good for you, you'll take your garbage inheritance and drive." Megan met his gaze, jaw clenched. "If you were just interested in garbage, you'd leave us alone." A door slammed. Nathan loomed, anger seeping from every pore. "We're done here," he snapped, yanking Terrence toward the porch. Rain still pattered as they idled outside, whispering, before roaring out of the driveway. Megan watched them leave, then took the jewelry and maps to a coffee shop with public Wi-Fi. There, she uploaded photos and documents to a cloud drive, breathing easier. That night, thunder rolled. Megan double-checked the locks, tucking the jewelry beneath a loose kitchen tile. Angie slept with a flashlight beside her, but Megan didn't bother with sleep at all. The next morning brought the first dry day. Megan met McAllister at his office, Angie lugging the precious box in a grocery bag. McAllister waved them in. "My old college roommate Frank is the county assessor. He'll do a site visit off the record for now." He clicked open an ancient ledger. "But listen, Megan, anything that moves the asset value above $500,000 triggers state review. If Pamela's been concealing this, she'll face tax scrutiny." Angie's brow furrowed. "Can she threaten us?" Megan answered first, "Let her try." Their plan was clear: document, file, push before Pamela's divorce finished. If assets got locked up in her new marriage, the window slammed closed. Frank arrived at the cottage that afternoon, his boots leaving muddy tracks. He measured, paced, and whistled low when Megan showed him the hand-painted map from the false bottom. "This line here, you've got lakefront, and by my count, another 40 acres behind that." Frank grinned, teeth tobacco-stained. Pamela's paperwork omitted half of it. As Frank drove off, Pamela's car rounded the corner, brake lights flaring. She strode through the puddles, pearl earrings glinting. "Frank's not the only one with friends," she said, tapping her phone. "I hear you've been stirring trouble." Megan braced herself, only writing old mistakes. Pamela smiled tightly. "Mistakes are expensive, you don't want that." Angie stepped forward. "You never cared about this place, why do you care now?" Pamela's look would have curdled milk. "Because you don't know what you're holding, and neither does your mother." Megan said, soft but clear, "Maybe it's time everyone found out." Pamela's gaze flickered, calculating. If you push this before probate closes, I promise I will litigate. Megan didn't blink. And if you try to pressure us, I'll show the bank statements. This isn't just about land, Pamela, it's about hiding income. The IRS would love to hear about that. Pamela went rigid, then turned on her heel and left. Megan shut the door and pushed a chair under the knob. She's scared, Megan whispered. That's better than angry, we're getting close. But Megan knew Pamela wouldn't wait for the courts to sort things out. She would try one last time to make sure nothing escaped her reach. Night clung to the windows again before the next blow landed. Angie, scrolling through Pamela's old social media on a burner phone, gasped. Look. On Pamela's feed, a tagged location dated 2 years before Lester died. Weekend at the Hidden Pines property, Lake Views forever. The photo showed Pamela and Terrence standing before what was clearly the same cottage, only part of the sign blurred out. They claimed they never stayed here, lied to the lawyer, Angie breathed. The next day, Megan marched straight to the clerk's office with the deeds, jewelry appraisal, and a printed copy of that post. The clerk, Mr. Jorgensen, frowned as he skimmed the paperwork. You're alleging fraud in the will, he asked. Megan met his gaze. Here's the proof Pamela transferred assets mid-marriage. She never declared the jewelry or extra acreage. Mr. Jorgensen tapped his pen. That triggers a state audit, regardless of the probate status. Back at the cottage, as Megan stewed over the next step, her phone buzzed with a new voicemail. Pamela's voice, rough-edged now, you're going to ruin everything. If you want to compromise, meet me at the boathouse by 10 tonight. Alone. Megan played the message for Angie. You're not going alone, Angie insisted steely. Megan pulled her daughter into a hug. We do this together. They waited until the stars blinked sharp in the country dark, then made their way down the weedy trail to the boathouse. The padlock had been pried open. Inside, the air was thick with mildew and something else, a memory of old fear. Pamela waited by the window, Nathan lurking in the corner, too nervous to meet anyone's eyes. I brought it, Megan said, holding up the envelope holding the original deed. Hand it over, Pamela ordered, voice harsh. Do that and I'll forget this ever happened. You'll keep the cottage and I'll walk away. Megan studied her in the half-light. That's not enough. You don't get to decide what's fair anymore. Suddenly Nathan lunged, grabbing at Angie. Megan shouted. Angie twisted, shoving clear. Megan blocked Nathan's path, slamming her fist on the creaking table. Pamela, shaking, demanded, You think you can just take what's not yours? It was never yours to take, Megan retorted. Nathan tried again. Megan stepped between him and the door. Don't even try it. Hand over the envelope, Megan snapped, her voice slicing through the tense hush. You think you can waltz in here and, Nathan sputtered, fear splashed across his face. I'm not asking, Megan shot back, glaring at him. Do it now. Nathan looked at Pamela, who stood silent, nails digging into her palm. You don't know what you're doing, that's safe, Nathan started, his voice faltering. Megan fixed her gaze on him. I know exactly what I'm doing, move or I will. A sharp gasp from Angie rippled through the boathouse. Nathan hesitated, then reached toward the drawer. I'll ruin you for this, he growled. Megan gave a cold laugh. You've already tried. She advanced, forcing Nathan backward until he had nowhere left to turn. Pamela's eyes darted. If you release those docs, everything's gone, my reputation, business, all of it. At least it'll be honest, Megan replied. She flipped open the envelope, its contents falling onto the table, the original property maps, the jewelry inventory, copies of Pamela's unreported transactions. Pamela slumped, broken. The boathouse felt suddenly enormous, silent but for the wind and Angie's ragged breathing. Megan kept her eyes on Pamela, who now folded in on herself, defeated. Nathan muttered, We're finished. Above them, headlights slanted through the windows. Frank the assessor, Mr. Jorgensen, and 2 local sheriff's deputies, all summoned to witness the confrontation. Megan called out. Frank stepped in, eyes wide at the scene. Enough games, hand everything over. Nathan's shoulders sagged as he surrendered the rest of the forged deeds. Pamela tried a final plea, voice wobbling. You've made a mistake, this will ruin us. Megan gathered the files, standing firm. Let the auditors decide. With that, the last thread tying Pamela and her accomplices to the property snapped. Behind her, Angie squeezed Megan's hand, trembling but triumphant. The fallout hit Cedillo like a cold front. News of the investigation whipped through church pews, beauty shops, even the rickety grocery store aisle. Pamela's salon lost half its clients overnight. Nathan's auto repair business found every call going to voicemail, and Terrence was shunned at Rotary after Megan filed formal charges with the state. Neighbors whispered, some quietly apologizing to Megan at the post office or sliding crockpots onto their porch. At a hastily called town hall, the mayor announced that anyone found complicit would be cut out of local contracts. Pamela's world shrank fast and hard. Cedillo had long memory and a short list of places to hide. Megan pressed forward. Once the state ruled on the appraisal, she and Angie established a trust fund. Frank walked them through the paperwork, no one else's name on it, no loopholes, no relatives sneaking in. Angie giggled when Megan let her hold the key. Suddenly, the whole ordeal felt like leaving a shadow, stepping into clean sunlight. McAllister helped push through corrective deeds, rewriting old wrongs with signatures and stamps, and a handshake that mattered more than any leftover bitterness. Megan stood in the kitchen, a sunbeam stretching across the velvet jewelry boxes, and watched Angie sweep cobwebs from the corners. We're really staying, Angie murmured, almost in disbelief. Megan reached to rest her hand on Angie's. Finally feels like ours. Never again would a false smile or a backroom deal decide what was kept or lost. Megan had faced down a lifetime of being told no and rewritten her own answer. There are victories that fill bank accounts, but the rarest kind restore a family's balance. One hard truth, one brave step, one honest deed at a time. If you've ever had to choose between what's easy and what's right, remember, sometimes the only way forward is through the storm, and the only true inheritance is the one you protect together. And somewhere in Cedillo, a battered cottage finally glows with light, sheltering the people brave enough to claim it. The golden morning after the state verdict, Megan stood in the threshold of the cottage, mug of scalding coffee warm between her palms. For the first time, her hands didn't shake. Absurdly, her biggest worry was whether the new patch on the roof would cure the leak above the old dresser. All else, for once, felt repairable. Mom, Angie appeared behind her, brushing dust off a stack of yellowed books. Guess what I found under the kitchen floorboards? A journal. Looks like great-gran kept notes all through 39 and 40, some of it's in Spanish. Her pride glimmered with wonder Megan hadn't seen in years. Bring it over, Megan said, patting the cracked table they hadn't dared use before. As they deciphered spidery handwriting and old recipes, laughter bubbled up, wobbly at first, then real, filling forgotten corners of the room. Outside, the lake mirrored the unclouded sky. The pines that once seemed to huddle against the decay now stood sentry over something solid, claimed. A knock split the moment. Megan tensed, but when she opened the door, it was Mrs. Hanley from the thrift store, clutching a battered tin. She smiled, soft and a bit proud. Thought you might want these back. Your father used to keep them behind my till caught him polishing them before school more than once. Inside, the tin revealed old family photos and a stack of legal envelopes, certificates predating all the ugly fights, records that would bolster their claims forever. Megan blinked, gratitude loosening something deep. Thank you, Mrs. Hanley. If Dad could see us now. He'd say you did him proud, Mrs. Hanley replied, voice gentle. Not everyone chooses the honest fight. After she left, Megan set to work, restoring, fixing, sanding down more than just splintered wood. She and Angie painted the porch door a bright turquoise, defiant, irrepressible, their stamp on ancestral land. Some days the ghosts of old anger pressed at the window panes, but Megan and Angie learned their own ritual of defiance. Pancakes and loud music, open calls with McAllister as he explained probate's final steps, laughter echoing off the plaster. As summer crested, neighbors began to stop by, sometimes with pies or just apologies and shy questions about the lakefront trails. Megan welcomed each, surprised by her own generosity. She let Angie lead a group of local kids along the newly marked boundary, her voice ringing out steadier with each retelling of how their family, at last, kept what rightfully belonged. On the last evening before school resumed, as dusk pooled gentle over the water, Megan and Angie sat on the porch, side by side. The cottage behind them glowed through every window. Stillness traced the air, broken only by the soft lap of waves and a distant coyote calling from the woods. Angie turned to her mother, voice quiet. "Do you think we'll really forget all the bad parts?" Megan squeezed her hand. "No," she said softly, "but we'll carry them right like the rest together." Angie smiled, looking out across the water. "All this time I thought coming here was losing everything, but it's where we found it again, isn't it?" "It is," Megan murmured. They sat in the hush, letting the lake breeze weave through their hair and the porch lights flicker gold. Their scars and triumphs marked the rooms now, stories carved into floorboards and laughter deep in the walls. Megan traced her thumb across the velvet pouch, tucked safely beside her heart. And as the night deepened, mother and daughter leaned closer, knowing the storm had given way to morning, their own at last. A late summer breeze rustled the pines and Angie's head drifted onto Megan's shoulder. "Promise we're done with secrets?" she asked, barely above a whisper. Megan brushed her daughter's tangled hair back, a weary smile easing her mouth. "No more secrets," she promised. "You'll know everything I know, from the deeds to the recipes." She squeezed Angie's hand and the two watched a single loon wing across the lake, its call lifting and echoing, lonely but fearless. Inside, the glow of the kitchen window beckoned, a patchwork of warmth, chores, and possibility. Megan rose. "Come on, let's finish those pancakes before someone else finds them. Maybe even start that journal, our own chapter." She reached for Angie's hand and together they headed in, their laughter mingling with the gentle hush of evening. The first thing Megan did was tuck the oldest photograph, her great-grandmother with children on that very porch, into a battered frame and set it above the hearth where everyone could see. "For all the women who kept this place going," she said, voice quiet but unyielding. Angie nodded, her gaze lingering on the photo. "Did you ever think we'd have something like this, after everything?" Megan turned, opening the windows to let the night air swirl with scents of pine and syrup. "No," she admitted, "but I think maybe we needed to lose what we thought we wanted, so we could see what was ours to begin with." A soft knock startled them, Mrs. Hanley again, cheeks flushed. She waved a brown paper bag. "Sorry to trouble so late, but it's tradition. First night that's truly yours, you get the town's strawberry jam." Megan's laughter was genuine, spilling bright across the threshold. "Thank you for all of it." Mrs. Hanley smiled, tucking a stray gray curl behind her ear. "You fought like hell. Don't forget how you won." As Megan closed the door, she turned to Angie. "No more running, no more letting go." They carried the jam to the old table, devoured pancakes and memory and hope beneath the humming lamp, while the wind and lake kept peaceful vigil outside. By midnight, the storm that had chased them for so long was nothing but memory, its shadow at last outpaced by the steady, certain glow of home.